All right, welcome everybody to Cloud IT Live, Day 1, Session 2. We have a really exciting presentation for you today. It features Brandon Williams from the state of Colorado. Brandon is one of my favorite IT professionals to talk to. I've learned so much from him over the past, I would say, 2 months I've been speaking with him. And I've heard this presentation a couple times, so if you have this kind of recording in the background, just listening to our voices, I really would recommend you pull this up front and you kind of hone in and pay attention to everything that Brandon has to say, because he is a really smart guy and he's doing some really amazing stuff at the state of Colorado. So I really don't want to take up too much of his time because you aren't here to hear me speak. So I will just pass things off to Brandon, and with that, I will let Brandon share his camera and get started.
Hi. Okay. So thanks. Let me go ahead and go into presenter mode here. There we are. All right. Well, so shadow IT. How do we bring shadow IT out of the shadows? I was searching around and trying to find the right image for shadow IT, and actually it's a lot harder than I initially thought. When I was looking around, I started really thinking about what shadow IT is. Most of your organizations have some term for it, so there's not a universal shadow IT. But when it really breaks down, it's frontline users, and you know them. They're the ones that are busting through your security protocols. They're the ones that are trying to end run any of your applications procedures to get stuff that they use in their private life and bring it into the work environment. And they're oftentimes seen as an internal threat. It's really easy to look at them as a threat. So I thought lock picking was actually a pretty good representation. I think we're really at a nexus point right now. I mean, we all know that shadow IT in some form exists, whether it's acknowledged or unacknowledged. It's really easy to put our head in the sand and just not acknowledge the requests that are coming in, or we don't have staffing to respond to all the different applications that are out there. And I think in large part this reflects that there's been a gravity shift. The ground moved underneath us, and the knowledge of technology in some ways has shifted from the IT organizations to those frontline users, the ones who on the weekend are using Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all these Google Maps, all these different applications to plan their personal lives. And when they look internal to our organizations, they say, why can't I use that to accelerate the program that I'm working on, or to spread knowledge on, or crowdsource things that we're actually trying to meet in terms of challenges? It's really hard because IT shops are not necessarily geared to look over the horizon and accommodate those kinds of, we don't have the resources to look at thousands of application requests that are coming in, much less the functional analysis that takes place, but to look at them from a security perspective. I think this has been a challenge that we've focused on in the last few years, and I think we've found a good working model for how the state of Colorado can meet it. I'm super curious as to how other organizations are meeting it as well, but one of the biggest tools that gave us the ability to move in the direction of embracing shadow IT was really the rise of these reporting and metrics capabilities within tool sets like Google, like Better Cloud, some of the web filtering tools that can do some of that security analysis automatically in the background and really help kind of be a force multiplier on the limited resources that we have in terms of approving applications or getting them moving. So I think really what we're talking about is there's a human problem and then there's a technology problem. And the human problem is really, how do you identify who shadow IT is? I mean, at the state of Colorado, we have 30,000 users. They're spread out over 64 different counties, all corners of the state of Colorado, and they do a variety of different tasks at the front line, everything from transportation to agriculture to public health to revenue, you name it. So being able to go down to the line level and identify who those local users are it seemed like a really daunting challenge. And so it's first how you identify them. Second, then, how do you organize around them? How do you manage that shadow IT group to get kind of a mutual benefit and get some of their information and input? And then how do you actually act on it? And the combination of those three is the overall objective is really to take them from a threat within the organization, or that perceived threat, and move them into something which they really are, which is a powerful tool. And I do believe that. And the reason that I believe that is because when we first migrated to Google, we were able to do a scan of all of the third-party applications that had been authenticated into the system. And at that time, we found slightly over 1,900 applications that had been linked in. And when I took that to our security office at the time, the initial reaction was kill it with fire. To stop it at the perimeter, kill it at the wall. We don't want any of these applications going out. And when we sat down and said, no, hang on just a second. You know, we've been in this job a long time, from the program side and from the IT side. We've met very few people who ever joined the state of Colorado with the intent of bringing it down from the inside. What we saw in these application requests was not a threat per se. It was more of a report card on IT. It was a report card on how IT was doing in terms of being innovative, in terms of looking over the horizon. So when we started having that conversation with the security office, we had an understanding that, look, we really need to get to a green light organization versus a red light organization, and then how we put those tools in place to actually get there. So where do you even start on how to identify them? This was our starting point. And a lot of it came out of the original migration to a collaboration environment. When you take a tool like Google and you put it into the bureaucratic world of government, you know, you have to spend a lot of face time understanding how people are using the system. What we found really quickly was anybody with a candy dish. You know, if you are in an organization, you have a candy dish. You have a candy dish not just because you love candy. Look, I'm a fan of that too, but you have a candy dish because there are people that are coming to your desk who have urgent questions. They need information. The tools that you are using, whether it's calendar, email, you know, drive searches, web searches, if those tools are not expediting your ability to get information, that candy dish is there to buy you time as you are trying to get the information and placate somebody who needs something. They also happen to be gathering areas. Everybody loves candy. So if people don't, if the person who has that candy dish isn't happy with the system that they're using, everybody in the organization is going to know about it. Oftentimes what you'll find, though, is when you sit down and talk to those people, and these are admins, office managers, executive admins, they're not typically calling IT every time they run into a roadblock when they're trying to get something done. There's usually somebody in that immediate vicinity who they normally go to, and it's probably a program person who happens to be really good at, you know, iPhone apps or something like that. And so as we started doing the migration training and get people up to speed on calendar and email, what we found was we started identifying all of these little local shadow IT members who were loosely affiliated at the local level but had no real visibility into what IT was doing on the grand scale or even on the department scale. And so when we started to identify those users, we sat down with them because we think that one of the really critical things to understand is their motivation. What's actually driving them to bring that application in? What challenge are they trying to solve? So by knowing their drive or their motivation, oftentimes those conversations spilled over into identifying other shadow IT that they're talking to. I think the flip side or the internal side of that is to identify what kind of metrics tools you actually have and be creative about it. Certainly we put in place some of the monitoring tools within the Google Control Panel. The application reviews from BetterCloud really helped us get an arm around what was good, what was something maybe we ought to hesitate on or investigate a little further. Some of the firewall pass-through metrics and types will give you an ID of you know, local IP addresses or places you can go to find these shadow IT that are trying applications. But once you identify them, then it was really about managing them. In our case, we have, like I said, 30,000 users across a vast span, and we've got a team of 3 here on the Google team. And so that was a lot of area to cover. what we ended up doing was we used some mix of traditional groups to be able to message back and forth, and we did that on an agency by agency basis. But we also used tools like Google Plus Communities to be able to create environments where they could share information, we could share information, we could use them as pilots and test groups on applications we wanted to activate. But it gave them a sense of community within those departments to allow for cross-pollination even between organizations within an agency. The other thing is, obviously, when you find that group and you manage them, get them to start having regular meetings, maybe on a monthly basis or so. We have 22 different organizations, and each of our Shadow IT groups meet on roughly a monthly basis, and then we have a presence at each of those meetings to be able to ask questions. That's half of it. The other half is actually listening to the answers. You know, it's really easy in government to come up with a million reasons why you couldn't do something, and oftentimes that's your gut response when an idea is presented. We've tried really hard to kind of track those and really think differently about our responses, and whether our gut response is a security one that we've just been conditioned to, or whether it's something that we really need to rethink the business process and embrace. And so setting up those feedback channels and being able to make sure that you're consistently providing information so that it's not a one and done, or it doesn't look like a PR event, that you're actually engaging with them and listening to them. I think then harnessing the power, and this is where we really saw the shift. You know, we've tried very hard to get away from traditional IT training. Getting people in a room for 8 hours with a 3-ring binder achieves largely two things in a traditional environment that we saw. One was giving people just an excuse not to work for a day, and they could say, no, I'm in training. I was in training. I'll get to that tomorrow. The other thing was we didn't really find that knowledge it wasn't sticky. They were hearing the information, they were watching somebody click on a screen, but they weren't actually getting engaged with any of the applications or understanding what they could apply. So we changed our training environment much more towards a workshop environment where we identify low-hanging fruit. We use the pilots as the indicators of what the challenges are, and then we use them as kind of the local technical representatives or ambassadors to be able to engage with the workplace, set up for the workshop in advance, and then we sit down and actually go through a workshop to get people trained on a tool, but they're actually solving problems at the same time. And we found that had a lot better return on our time and energy investment. I think the other thing, and maybe I'm letting a secret out, but the term pilot was really powerful in the state of Colorado. We found it's red tape busting magic. If we threw pilot down on a project name, somehow a lot of the traditional forms and committees and bureaucratic baggage that comes along with doing a project seemed to kind of disappear. You know, it was reducing it to a pilot was a test. It didn't seem formal. And that gave us a lot of flexibility on shorter timelines. And when we realized that that was powerful, what we did was we restructured the Google environment to reflect that. So we went back and we created sub-organizational units for each of our departments that actually had a pilot category. We took those Shadow IT members and we moved them into the pilot category. We gave them greater rights, greater access to applications than were open for the entire domain. And we really used that as kind of a jumping off point for workshops and starting to consider projects that you know, normally just would have gotten a no answer if they'd asked the question. We actually created a secure sandbox. We made it open and allowed them to jump in and break stuff. I think the next thing was actually acting. And so through the workshops, we started to put together time scales. So we'd have 60 or 90 days. If we had a project that couldn't be solved in that initial workshop, we brought in the Shadow IT and we did a longer duration kind of pilot that over 60 or 90 days would try and wireframe a solution. But it really, we brought them in here. Since we're all on Google, I mean, you can work from Nepal and still be effective. And so we were able to have rotations where we brought pilot users from the departments directly into the Google team room, and they got to see IT from a different perspective, and frankly, we learned more than they got from being able to ask them questions. The other thing was then to take those good ideas and get them out. Set up a communications method or somewhere that you can post information to so that other pilot or Shadow IT users in other departments will be able to capitalize on good ideas and see best practices that are being done in other agencies. Going along with that, it's not just emphasizing the positive, because it's really easy just to kind of pat ourselves on the back when something works. We also thought it was equally as important to admit where we failed, and we fail a lot. But it was to be able to say, hey, look, we tried this. We do short write-ups, and we say, look, this application, we thought it was going to work. Here's why it didn't. We ran into issues, and we're really open about that. Usually that spurs a conversation over what alternatives are available, or looking at it from a different perspective that maybe we hadn't considered. So we're really open about our failures and sharing those with the pilot groups as well. So once it was automated, once we identified the Shadow IT, we figured out what their motivations were, and then we started to organize them and talk to them and actually listen to them. Then it was a question of how do we inject a force multiplier for a team of 3 to be able to start to get stuff out the door. It was really important to us early on that we change our relationship with our customers, is a weird term, but for lack of a better one, customers. We wanted to change the relationship from one that wasn't just a yes-no organization or a traditional keeping the lights on organization, or we wanted to make it a little bit more academic, a little bit more of a real conversation, and show them that we could move at the speed of technology instead of the speed of government. So automation played a huge role in that. I'll walk through a little bit of that. But we were trying to turn around application reviews and requests very quickly. And that turned into something that we now call App Review Friday, which sounds like a party. I'm not sure it's as much of a party as it actually is, but App Review Friday was something that we said, hey, systematically, every single Friday, we're going to sit down and we're going to go through the applications that we receive online. We're going to do a functional assessment, a security assessment. If it works, we're going to turn it on in a pilot capacity, or we're going to turn it on for the domain if it's a very clear winner. So I'll kind of walk through that. App requests come in a number of ways. Like most IT organizations, the official answer is that everything comes through our ticketing system, and we have an incredibly detailed tracking system to give metrics on that. The reality is, as IT professionals, we get stopped in the hallway, somebody calls us, we get it in a myriad of ways that are probably informal. So we track all of those, and we put them we use Trello as a way of tracking all of our requests that come in, mainly because we can turn it to the program side so they can see where their requests are sitting. And I'll show a screenshot of that in a second. But so we get the request, and then our team does a functional review. Really, this is designed to just say from a walkthrough, does it do what it says it's going to do? There's a difference between marketing language and actual application, installation and use. And so we do a functional assessment just to verify, hey, it does what it says it does. We take a look at other applications we've enabled or things that are available within already paid systems that we have. And if there's an equivalent that the user doesn't know about, then we can identify that. But once that functional review is done, then we go through a very detailed security assessment. This one was tricky. We're not traditional security officers, so we work with our Chief Information Security Office, and we came up with a multi-step program that goes through everything from data access needs to storage locations to the actual ownership of the data, where it's transferred, and how frequently it's accessed. And so we were able to start identifying, things that were local app scripts run versus applications that take information out of our system and host it somewhere else. And over time, we've been able to refine a security walkthrough that gives us the basic information so that we can accelerate a security officer's review. Basically, we've been able to do the grunt work that a security office would normally do in order to help expedite those assessments. Then we actually make the approval or rejection based upon the functionality in the security review. Important in this is that we actually tell the user. We saw too many times in traditional systems where OIT made a decision but never really conveyed it. Certainly didn't do it, publicly or on the domain, and all of a sudden the user comes back 3 months later and says, "Hey, I made a request. I never heard." Well, now you're in a position of not only responding to the request, but now you never told him anything. So now you've got a reputation issue and a credibility issue as well. So when we do that approval and rejection, we also do an analysis posting. We explain exactly why something was approved, or if it was disapproved, we explain that as well, and then offer alternatives. And so this is actually a screenshot from the board that we use to do it. So you can see we break it up. I mean, if you haven't used Trello, it's great. It's like a big whiteboard that you can actually apply stickies, click into them, and read details. So we use, I come out of emergency management, so we use fire flag colors that are coming in. So you've got app extension requests. You've got ones that are currently in review, you've got ones that have been approved, and you have ones that have been denied. And so our users can click on each of these cards and get detailed information at every step of the process, as well as what the final analysis was. And in the denied column, we do provide information regarding alternatives that we've identified in the research. So this is what, that's Lilo's face plastered all over those cards. So Lilo currently runs and owns App Review Friday, and so he's the one that does that, on a weekend basis. And so what do we do once they're actually approved? Well, in the Google Apps environment with the control panel, and specifically when you're managing Chrome devices, it opens up the opportunity that you can manage applications and extensions. So you've got two different worlds that we're wrestling with. We've got certainly applications that are OAuth'd in, that we can run surveys and we can manage those in a separate chain. But then, since Google Chrome browser is our default browser around the state, we're able to actually create a state.co.us domain-specific Chrome, part of the Chrome Web Store. So our users, when they go to the Chrome Web Store, if they're logged into the browser, it automatically takes them to this landing page. This landing page gives them the links to all of the extensions and applications. This one was pretty critical for taking that turn and really getting our arms around from a security perspective, because it allowed us to whitelist or blacklist applications. Users can still survey applications that are available on the Chrome Store. It just stops them at the point of installation. At the point of installation, that's when they start the process of making the app request. So we started seeing a lot more app requests come in when we were able to kind of tighten down the installation permissions on the Chrome Store, and be able to kind of meter that out and do a lot more better analysis of things that were authorized in the system. So Chrome Store has been really revolutionary for us and being able to manage those devices. I think from an impact perspective, I think along the lines of the Chrome Store, certainly the discussions in the Chrome Store, we've had an increased situational awareness, just a better understanding of our users, their needs, their trends, maybe in some ways understanding how far we are behind some of those echelons. And I think we've also, through the use of Shadow IT, we've been able to forward deploy weather vanes. I mean, we're able to detect where an agency is going pretty early in the process. Traditionally, what would happen is they would submit a formal request for review by IT for an application they want to buy. This takes it and puts it one step closer to the point of decision at the department level when they're interested in a technology. So it gives us further up in that chain so that we can have conversations before it gets to the point where somebody's willing to commit money and then gets mad because some IT person says no. So I think that changed a lot of our relationships. I think it certainly enhanced our trust with the departments. And the rapid experiments really is where we saw cost avoidance metrics roll up to senior leadership, where we really engaged Shadow IT, and increasing that kind of both accountability on our part, but making our operation transparent, bringing them into the family, and really having an open conversation. And so it's really exciting to see where it's going. I'm fascinated to see how other organizations are also meeting these challenges. This is what Simply worked in Colorado, and we're happy to share our smile and scars experiences in doing it. But I think there's a poll going out that I'd be super curious to see where you all sit and open to ideas on how to do it better. So with that, I think I will take down here the slide presentation. All right, see that the poll's up. And I think we'll be doing a Q&A. So if there are any kind of questions, happy to field them. I know we're running short on time, but...
Yeah, we can go a few minutes over, I think. Looks like we've had about half the people in the audience vote, so if you haven't voted yet, that would be great. Now we'll go ahead and share the results. So Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really good breakout of where we said. I think we were definitely in the not confident at all a couple of years ago when we first started this. And I would say that even we as an organization, I mean, I think every day we come into work and find out how little we know. And so I guess the goal is always to become dumber each day. And so I'd say that we're probably at a high 3 to 4 confidence level that we know at least what's going on. I don't think that the effort to identify shadow IT and their needs, I don't know that I'll ever feel a 5 on that. I'm pretty sure I don't want to.
So we've got a few questions that came in a lot towards the end.
Okay.
A few people asked, is there a tool you use for the security review of new app requests, or is it a manual checklist you could share?
Yeah, it's primarily a manual checklist that we use. Our security officers have a number of different tools that I can also put together in a list and share. But it really comes down for us as a government entity. It's looking at the ownership, validating any of the code that's available, particularly if it's open source, of course, reaching out to the company and understanding data location requirements. Then there's some filtering and analysis that's done in a test domain that actually tracks packets to see where they go. And so a lot of what we do is we gather all that contact information, we do the background, we do the data location information, and we package that up so that the security office, if they look at something to determine that it needs a closer inspection, then they can start doing more detailed packet analysis. Yeah.
What about feedback from your staff since you've kind of launched this new style of I guess, conquering shadow IT? Do you feel that your staff of 30,000 customers or users feel that they get better service from your department as a result of this more flexible approach? What kind of feedback have you received?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's been really positive. I think I also like the fact that we get some negative, mainly because they now have a face that they can come back to. I think oftentimes IT organizations, especially in a 30,000 user level, they don't necessarily know all of the faces in IT. So having somebody who's coming out representing IT, engaging with shadow IT, gives them a point of contact. I think probably the biggest positive feedback we've gotten, though, is the thank you that everybody in government recognizes that good ideas die instantly. It dies at that point when somebody identifies an application they want. You submit a ticket. You know, the ticket agent doesn't know exactly who to send that to because nobody in IT really owns third-party applications. Do I send it to procurement, where that's kind of a dead end? The IT directors are too busy keeping the lights on to really engage in a lot of creative, innovative stuff. And so I think it's really provided a pressure valve or an outlet for our users to just know who to bring that question up to. And so I think that's been probably the most positive. And the nasty little truth is we've learned more about innovation and creativity on what our users are doing than anything we're doing in-house. If anything, it brought the reality home that we need to be better each day than we were the day before.
Okay, so I think we can do one last question if that works for you. How did you do that first kind of initial scan? I guess if you were an IT organization and you were kind of overwhelmed with the thought of even approaching this, what
Sure.
kind of, did you use agents, machines, via firewall?
We actually, so our first initial scan when we took the, this was right after our migration a few years ago, it was the simple scan that's done out of the Google Control Panel. When you go onto an application and you authenticate to tie it to your, your domain address, there is a scan that can be done that lists all of those applications, or at least all the users that have installed applications. You can parse the information as well, and you can start to generate lists of applications or users that have lots of them tied in. That one, it gave us an idea on how many applications we had out there. Two, it gave us the list initially of shadow IT. I was on the program side before, I was shadow IT before coming to the light side of IT. And it was no surprise that I found my name a lot on those. But I think once we identified that, then we searched for tools that gave a greater granularity. Better Cloud's app suite and their app analysis gave us the ability to have much more granularity, and frankly, it was a turning point for us in authorizing applications, because now we had something that could provide a touch point that we could go and see what the rankings were, which ones, because Better Cloud does some analysis on the back end to be able to rank or give a numeric value of confidence level regarding functionality and security. And that was huge in terms of App Review Friday and giving Lilo a little bit of break so that he could have something as a reference document to help gather that information up for security officers.
All right. Well, it looks like we got a ton of questions that we didn't have time to get to, but we will answer those in some way or form, probably on our media property, bettercloud.com/monitor. So we have another session coming up in 30 minutes. That's from Smartsheet. But with that, I'd really just like to thank Brandon for his time. That was an awesome and insightful presentation. So I appreciate it, and we will see all of you back in 30 minutes.
Cool. Thanks all.